I did a video like a month or two ago with a guy called Josh Bridgman, who he's recently got his pro card. He's an IFBB pro, right? At the time, but this is before I started this cut, so we were both around 100 kilograms in body weight, right? He made me look like a fucking skinny little girl. Like I was quite confident before that session, right? And at the end of the session, I literally went home and was like, why am I even bothering? He had so much more muscle mass than me, it was embarrassing. Like I looked, my fucking shoulders, my upper chest, it was honestly, I felt so like a piece of shit, right? Now, if you look at him a few years ago, like I definitely have above average genetics. I think I have very good genetics to build muscle, and in terms of symmetry, and I think I'm lucky in that sense. I can look pretty decent, right? If you look at him, say 5 years ago, I'd say if anything, my genetics are probably better than his, right? So in that case, how can I be taking drugs and then train with a guy who also takes drugs and he looks so much better than me at the same body weight? I don't see how it's possible. Do you know what I mean? I think that in itself, I think I made it like 6 weeks, maybe 2 months ago. Yeah, that in itself for me is just overwhelmingly clear that I'm not on drugs, because how would
a lot of people will just say you're on
I'd be on the
TRT
shittest drugs, you know what I mean, that don't work for that to be the case.
Or you're just on TRT and he's on blasting hella shit because he's trying to be IFBB pro.
Yeah, but I still think, like, again, this is the annoying thing, right? Like, I'm never gonna do it, but part of me is like, if I just fucking did whatever the best drugs are for like 6 months here, I'd be a fucking monster. I'd be the biggest, strongest man on the planet, mate. That's what almost annoys me the most, is that like, part of me is like, do you know what? I'm just gonna go and fucking take loads of drugs and be like, that's what I look like on drugs, do you know what I mean? But obviously I'm not gonna do that, so it's not an option, but yeah.
Well, you never know. Sometimes the best looking guys natural respond shitty to drugs and they end up like not that much better.
Ironic, yeah, but
but anyway, like obviously this thing I think will seal the deal if we can coordinate it.
That's it. Ultimately, all of these things are just like largely subjective. I want to have something that is just conclusive, or at least beyond reasonable doubt. Like, that would be ideal. That's what I want to have, and then it would just be like.
And what'd you weigh during your triple jumping days?
My lightest right towards the end. So in the last like 6 months, I got down to like 80 kilograms. Let me calculate this. So in pounds, that would be. So my lightest I got down to like 176, which I sustained for like a few months.
And then, that's while like starving yourself is 170.
I'm not joking. I reckon, so I would compete every weekend, right? Monday to Friday. Yeah. There were times when I'd eat like soup for my meals. I reckon there were times when I was eating like sub 1,000 calories a day. Like I had no idea what I was doing. Like I had no understanding of like nutrition. Like I wasn't even taking protein at that point. I didn't know what, I thought it was like bro science. So I literally was probably consuming fucking 30 grams of protein a day at most. I was eating absolutely nothing. I was literally starving myself. Then I'd go and compete and I'd fucking binge for like 2 days, eat like 400 donuts and stuff for like a day or two. Then I'd go back and just completely kill myself again for a week. And I did that cycle for a whole year. Like, again, I had no idea what I was doing, but that's what I did for like, so by the end, I was just gaunt. I was proper like, ironically, I was still bigger than other triple jumpers, because those guys are like skinny as fuck, but compared to me now, I was significantly smaller. So I went from a hyper depleted state doing, for the last year, I wanted to be, I wanted to compete in the Olympics, right? So I wanted to get super skinny, so I just cut out any semblance of hypertrophy. So I did zero bodybuilding training for at least a year, maybe longer, coupled with completely depleting myself for the entire summer. I then literally got injured and overnight was like, right, that's it, I'm gonna go mad. So I went bodybuilding 6 days a week, eating, you can watch my video, that's when I was doing all the food challenges. I was doing like 20,000, 25,000 calorie food challenges. I was literally consuming, short of being on like an intravenous drip, as many calories as I could physically stomach. I did that for so long. So, I feel like I could gain more than 40 pounds in a year with that in mind. I don't think it's even that much of a, surprising gain. Like, it would have been a shit ton of water, a bit of fat, obviously a good amount of muscle mass, but like, I don't think, for me, that isn't surprising at all. I think I see people do that all the time, gain more and lose more than that in far shorter periods than a year.
So when you were triple jumping, like that was obviously multiple years that you dedicated yourself to that,
like
I'm assuming.
9. I did it seriously. I was like, I considered myself a triple jumper. Like, I was doing it as, there's no money in that sport. So unless you're like the top 10 in the world, which I wasn't, like, to be honest, I wasn't, in hindsight, I was like, at best, I think I was like ranked 3rd in the UK. I was still a long way off qualifying for the Olympics, but I'm a very optimistic guy, so I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna, in my head I was like, I'm gonna try and qualify for the Olympics. I didn't really even get close, but that was my plan.
So during those 9 years, you never tried to thought of like the ratio of if I eat at maintenance and maybe I gain a bit of weight, but my performance is better from the fuel versus like depleting myself.
My understanding back then, like I didn't even fucking know what maintenance was. Like honestly, I like my understanding.
Just eating more to be like I'll have the energy to jump further versus even if I weigh a bit more.
Yeah, true. So obviously, if I was doing that now, like I kind of wish I had my mindset back.
Because I think people would be skeptical that you've depleted for 9 years.
No. That was only the last like for the first. It was only the last 5 years where I was like at a really good level, like a national level, and then it was the last probably year, maybe, because in track and field you do like a whole winter where you just do a shit ton of training volume, then you kind of, you taper, you get really sharp, and then you come out for the summer.
Sure.
So probably the last 1.5 cycles of that, so maybe a year and a half, maybe 18 months, that I was like, right, do you know what, I've got to get a light now. So then I made a concerted effort and probably dropped, from where I'd been hovering, probably dropped another 10 pounds, then just kind of maintained that throughout the summer, but just gradually probably got more and more.
So you would hang out at like 182 pounds, just like not training in the gym for hypertrophy.
Say again, mate. Say that again.
Like you would deplete down to like 170 pounds or whatever it was. I think you said like 80 something kilos.
I think it was like
something.
Yeah, I think at my very lightest. So the last competition I did that was like I did like an international. That was my first ever international competition, and I was like, this is it. I'm gonna go. In my brain, I correlated being skinny as fuck with being a good triple jumper. So I was just like, I'm literally gonna starve myself. Like I would go to bed like with pain in my stomach. I had like dreams about Krispy Kreme donuts. Like it was pretty horrendous. But at that point, I got down to like, I think it was like pretty much bang on 80 kilos, so 76.5 pounds or something.
Right, so like your normal walking around weight prior to that was 10 pounds heavier, so you were like close to 190, just like not even training?
Let me calculate it, one sec. I mean straight away, like when so I would binge, I would compete, and then I would binge for like, it started out being like, oh, I'll go out after my competition and have a cheat meal. That turned into like a fucking cheat weekend where I'd probably do a 10,000 calorie challenge on Saturday and Sunday where I was just literally getting as much food as I could because my body was like, I need food, and my brain was just obviously messed up. So even as a result of that, probably would jump up like, I reckon probably 10 pounds over those 2 days I'd put on just from, going from being hyper depleted to then having a shit ton of food in my system. So like,
no, right. But I mean like, so you would deplete for the actual competitions, but I mean like the rest of the year when you're like off season or whatever, when you're not depleting, would you walk around?
Let me work out in pounds. I reckon maybe like 10 to 15 pounds heavier. Like if I for the rest of the time, maybe the points, because I would the summer season would last like, I don't know, you'd be competing for like 3-4 months. So for that time, I'd gradually get more and more, depleted and gaunt and skinny. But leading up, and you can see pictures and videos of me. I say skinny, I'm not skinny, but compared to like YouTuber bodybuilder standards, I am pretty skinny at that point, right? Leading up to that, it's a long time ago, but maybe I was like 10, 15 pounds heavier, before I was like, right, that's it. So I'll do my winter training, maybe 10, 15 pounds heavier, and then over the course of the summer, probably, through that kind of starvation and doing no bodybuilding, probably drop like 10 to 15 pounds. And like I said, that peak at like 176-ish was when I was like off the back of having done that for however many successive weeks.
All right. So I'm just trying to like lay framework for people. Like obviously these tests will show everything, but I'm just like, people, you can understand the skepticism where you're a guy who doesn't even train in the gym and you're like a lean looking 190 walking around normally, not even doing hypertrophy work, like fucking at all.
But as well, bear in mind though, I say I wasn't doing fucking arm curls and like pec flies, but obviously as a triple jumper, I'm in the gym. I was in the gym like, 3 days a week doing like, plyometrics, like squat jumps, all kind, predominantly lower body work, all explosive stuff, Olympic lifts, but there's still going to be some hypertrophy stimulus from that, right?
Okay.
Going to be a little bit. You still, Ollie lifters are still monsters, right? So you're still going to get some hypertrophy stimulus, but obviously when I started bodybuilding, it was 100% full on hypertrophy. Also prior to that, so in my kind of formative track and field days, I was constantly fighting a battle between when I was a kid, at school, I had like, again, good genetics. I was muscular, but I was still quite slim, right? So I wanted to be, always, as most teenage boys want to, they want to be massive jacked guys, right? So I wanted to be massive. So I remember when I was like 16, my uncle gave me some like dumbbells and I was just doing a shit ton of arm curls in my bedroom, right? Like an absolute weirdo. But I did that for like, I did kind of what I thought was a bit of bodybuilding for a few years. And then it wasn't until I was like, do you know what? I've got to start taking athletics seriously now that I completely sacked that off. So I was still doing, in my early, basically, if you look at pictures of me when I first started track and field, I was bigger than I was towards the end when I started taking it more seriously and realized that carrying upper body mass was just holding me back, you know. But obviously I went around it, or went about it in the complete wrong way. But you can see pictures of me as a kid, like I obviously had very good genetics, and I was always the fastest kid, I was always the strongest kid. So it's, yeah, I just think, I don't know, for me it's frustrating because for me I think it's pretty fucking obvious that I'm natural. But obviously someone that doesn't know me or doesn't watch my content or hasn't seen what I've done previously, I can understand how maybe they'd have suspicions.
All right. Yeah. I guess, I don't know, maybe I'll like set up, do like a group 3-way DM with the WNBF or any of these other federations and see if they're down for the structure we proposed, because it seems kind of like a no-brainer business decision. It's not like it's just a novelty thing for your channel. It's like actually good promotion for them, obviously, if they're like the premier league who has like bulletproof testing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's what my thinking was, like, if you put yourself in my shoes, right, what would you do? Do you know what I mean? What would you do to, and like some people say, oh, just don't worry about it, see it as a compliment, but like, that's fine at first. At first I was like, oh yeah, it is. You know, you're saying I look so good, like that I must be taking drugs. That is a compliment, right? But also actually, like, if you analyze it, it's that's a pretty horrendous accusation. If you analyze like what kind of a person that would make me to have been lying this entire time, I'd be a piece of shit, right? So that is actually a pretty horrible accusation. So yeah, I've gone from being like, do you know what, I don't care. Like at times I even found it funny. Now it's like, do you know what, I actually would like to do something about it, because it's like, yeah.
Like when you do the comparisons of physiques too, like it gets really, like there's a lot of times you'll say stuff like, oh, it's so obvious when you compare me to like Josh Bridgham or whatever, but there's guys like Andre Dieu who have like the peak fucking pinnacle genetics per any standards of people in this industry, but he only steps on stage at like 190 or some shit, and I'm pretty sure he's like close to the same height as you or something like that. But it's like, so it's not just about like weight, you know, it's about so. But
I think for me to get to, I don't know, but like how, like when he competes, what would he be, like 5%? Like how, do you know what I mean, what percent body fat would he be, like mega low, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't think anyone would argue that you're striking distance of like stage ready within like 10 to 15 pounds anyways, a lot of the time.
I think if you saw me in real life, I think you would change your opinion. I think you're judging it off like seeing me from front on, generally waist up, in a really, really flattering Instagram picture. If you see me walking around, like, yeah. I did a DEXA like 6 weeks ago, and I was like, I think I was 16.9% body fat. And even, let's say that's, they can be a few points high. So even if I'm like 14% body fat, that's a long way off stage ready, right? Like I have to drop a lot of weight to get that lean. So like,
I think the DEXAs, everyone's gonna be like, the DEXA doesn't mean shit. But I mean, like,
I also, the first one I did, when I did a DEXA, I also at the same time, I got calipers done, and I got what's that one, the weird fucking thing you sit in, it's like a bod pod or something. I did 3 around the same time, and they were all within like 1% of each other, so it's not that far off, you know. But even so, like I said, it's what doesn't work in my favor is that I look, my physique, I'm very fortunate in that where I deposit body fat gives me the illusion of being significantly leaner than I am. You know, like I even did an Instagram post the other day, because when I've started this cut, I went from like 99 kilos down to like just under 94. So I dropped like, what is that, 12 pounds, whatever. But my physique looked almost identical. Like you couldn't see, I looked a little bit leaner, a little bit sharper, but like particularly like around my kind of torso didn't look much different. And that's because I think the first place I would lose fat is like lower back, maybe glutes, maybe like thighs, which you don't even really see in a picture. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think the first like 10 pounds, a lot of that is just like water weight anyways, probably. Yeah. But I mean, you have to actually eat like 2,500 calories to lose weight. Like it seems really low considering how much you get away with eating and not really.
So when back in the day, going back a couple of years ago, when I was like when I was at the I've toyed with powerlifting twice. I've had 2 stints. One where I did it for a few years where I competed. Then I got sick of it and went back to bodybuilding for like a year. And then recently with lockdown, I had nothing to do, so I just built a gym and started powerlifting again. I had about a year of doing that. Got strong as fuck. Every time I powerlift, I'll just eat a shit ton of food because for me, like, I know you could maintain body weight and your strength to power ratio gets better, but that's boring. I want to see my numbers going up, and I know that if I eat a shit ton of food, my numbers go up. So that's what I'm going to do. But for me, it's not sustainable because I got to a point in the past where I'm like pouring olive oil in my protein shakes to get enough so I can just drink calories because I can't stomach any more food. So there's been times
and
when I reckon
what calorie intake is that at where you're like pouring?
There's been times like going back to when I was competing as a powerlifter in the IPF. And I've been drug tested as well in the IPF as a powerlifter.
Yeah.
There was a point when I was competing in the 105 kilo class, which is like, I don't know what that is, 220 or something. And that was, for me, I was obviously trying to get as close to that limit as I could. And I was eating so much food. And I reckon towards the end of that point, I was eating over 5,000 calories a day and not gaining very much weight. But then, like,
I'm always skeptical when I hear people say I was eating so much because, like, for example, do you know who James English is?
Yeah. He's a friend of mine. Yeah, he's a cool guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So he thought he was eating. He has sort of like a similar like body composition to you, where he's like, even when he bulks, he does not really get like visibly fat.
I reckon he has like dream ratios, right? In terms of powerlifting, he's got fucking short legs, short arms. Like he's an absolute. I feel like he's built to be strong as fuck, right?
What I'm saying is, he always thought he was eating a lot of food, and his appetite is just bad. And it turns out after he actually calculated everything, he was eating like